Hi, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center here at Go Local Live. I'm Ava Gaudette. Very excited about my next guest. She is the eldest of the 11th generation of the Browns of Rhode Island, and she's written a book inspired by her family called Grappling with Legacy. It is my honor to introduce Sylvia Brown. Hi, Sylvia.
Hi, Ava.
Thank you so much. Nice meeting you too. Thank you so much for being here. So, we as Rhode Islanders obviously very, very familiar with the Brown name.
Yes.
And there's probably a lot that we don't know about the family history. So what inspired you to write this book about your family legacy?
Well, I grew up full of admiration for my grandfather and father and the public service and philanthropy they did. And then when I was in my 20s, my father chose to give his inheritance and mine to Brown University. And then 13 years ago, I was attending the first public forum of the university's Committee on Slavery and Justice. And one of the speakers got up on stage and said they were no good Browns. And that just hit me like a punch in the stomach. And I decided, I didn't know what she was talking about. I thought, have I been fed a bunch of lies? I want to find out about these ancestors and really understand what happened. And so it took me 12 years, because I'm not a trained historian, and it just so happens that my family archive is the largest family business archive in America. But I discovered an amazing story over 11 generations about why Americans give and why charity and philanthropy are so much a part of the American ethos. And I discovered that the story of the Brown family mirrors the evolution of this history of philanthropy. And I thought that was really quite fascinating, and that I needed to turn it into a book to tell the world about the other 10 generations that most people don't know about. There's been a lot of focus on the 18th century Browns, on one generation. There are 10 others that have an interesting story.
So, largest family archives in the country.
The business archive.
Was that an overwhelming body of information when you decided to embark on this?
Totally overwhelming. I had to employ people who knew how to read 18th and 19th century letters. Thank God, once the typewriter was invented, it made things a lot easier for me.
Wow.
I had to learn about American history. I had to learn about people's daily lives over 300 years. It was difficult for someone without training.
Yeah, I imagine. Over the 12 years that it took you to write the book, were there a lot of surprising things that you learned about your family? Was it sort of what you expected to read, knowing what you knew about your own family? What was it like?
Well, one of the themes, which means a lot to me, is the relationship between parents and children and the expectations that parents have for their children, and whether the children live up to it or whether parents are disappointed by their children. You have generations of the Brown families where children grew up without a father. What impact did that have on them? There's a common thread. There's this sense of public service and wanting to make the world a better place, which recurs from one generation to the next, but in different ways, and that was really interesting.
Yeah, there's a tagline on your website that says, "What fuels a family's compulsion for philanthropy?" And I love the choice of word there, compulsion, that it's not just a desire or a hope. Why did you choose that particular word to describe it?
I guess it's because I have that in my DNA. I started life on Wall Street, but I've always been very interested in economic development. And little by little, I just kept being drawn to the world of philanthropy, but in a 21st century way. I'm very interested in social enterprise and impact investing. And when I moved back to Rhode Island a year and a half ago, I decided to get very involved in initiatives that are helping Rhode Island become more just and resilient. So I guess it's in my DNA, and it must have been in my ancestors' DNA.
It sounds like it, yeah. I mean, it's obviously something passed through the generations that every generation sort of wanted to pursue that same goal for continuing to help the community around you.
And in very different ways, because the way my 18th century ancestors thought they were helping the community does not look particularly altruistic to us today. In fact, some of it we would sort of condemn. So it evolved over time, but it evolved for all of America over time.
Right, there was sort of, there are certain things that were more commonplace in different generations, more acceptable, or just the way things were, that, like you said, things change through the years, and to pass judgment on that seems difficult to do from such a distance.
Yeah, absolutely. For example, Nicholas Brown II, the man after whom Brown University is named, was the first to be truly altruistic, to view a university as an agent of social change, which is something that's become part of the American ethos. And he decided to pour his money into Brown University because he wanted to give a generation of young men the moral compass they needed to become leaders in the tumultuous world which was America in the early 19th century. So that was very innovative. There were other generations that were less innovative, that sort of followed the trends and gave a lot of money away, but without doing anything groundbreaking. So it varied from one generation to the next.
And Nicholas is sort of the centerpiece of the book. Did you have that as a preconceived idea before you wrote it, or was that something you decided to do after doing the research?
No, I didn't. I was surprised that Brown University had never commissioned a biography of its namesake. And after I saw all the press and informed myself about the 18th century Browns, I thought, well, what was it like to be the child of that generation? And what was it like to have these larger-than-life uncles, Moses and John Brown, about which so much has been written? And then when I discovered that giving to universities, thinking of universities as agents of social change, really started here in Rhode Island, that made me very proud, because I love things that Rhode Island did first. So I decided that was a good focus for my book.
Tell us a little bit about the title of the book. Why did you choose Grappling with Legacy as the title for this story?
Well, I think we're all grappling with our legacy, whether it's our relationship with our parents or, in my case, with what ancestors were doing 400 years ago. And, half of it is what you inherit, and half of it is what you decide to do with it. Mm-hmm. How are you going to take these lessons and do your bit to make the world a better place?
How do you do it?
How do I do it? Well,
this is your family legacy.
This is my legacy, and unfortunately I don't have access to the resources, the fabulous wealth of my grandfather, for example, who was called by the tabloids, it wasn't true, but the tabloids called him the richest baby in America in 1900 because his father and his uncle died within 2 months of his birth. So I have to leverage what I have, and I have decided that teaching people about good giving, about how to be more thoughtful and strategic in how they give their money away, is the way I'm going to do that. And so I've developed a course called Uplifting Journeys, a little bit like the preceding guest you had on the show. I take people away to teach them about good giving. I take them to places around the world that have interesting issues and interesting solutions. And I teach them the basic lessons of good giving. How do you pick a cause? How do you choose a nonprofit? How do you measure your impact? So that's how I'm doing my bit.
That's a really cool idea, because I think there are a lot of people out there that want to be able to help and feel sort of overwhelmed by the options. That there are a lot of causes, there are a lot of organizations. Do you start your own organization? Do you volunteer your time? Do you donate money? That I can see how people would need guidance with that. So I love that idea.
Yeah, and particularly for people who are not ultra high net worth, who can't afford private banks and consultants, and who have to make their own decisions. There's not a lot of information, and at the same time, people don't spend a lot of time researching the organizations they're going to give their money to. Last year, about 16% of Americans spent over 2 hours doing research, which is crazy because we spend so much time looking up restaurants and vacations or
on Facebook.
Yes, or stocks and bonds that we're going to invest in, but the money we give to charity, we just write a check without thinking, or we're led entirely by our heart or a spur of the moment desire, or maybe a friend who wants us to go to their benefit. And it's not that difficult. It's not black magic to at least know the principles of how to give more thoughtfully, and that's what I want to try to help people do.
Do you have any of these classes or workshops coming up?
I do. I have 2 trips in 2018, one to Sicily, which should be of interest to the Italian-American community here in Rhode Island, and another one for families to the Sacred Valley of Peru, which is a great place to combine a family vacation with 5 days of learning, which will be learning how to give well and also family dynamics, and a chance to volunteer in a local nonprofit. So hopefully balancing the head and the heart, which is what we try to do. So it's called Uplifting Journeys, and you can find out all about these trips at upliftingjourneys.com.
Perfect. And where can we purchase the book?
So the book has a website, grapplingwithlegacy.com, and of course it's on Amazon, and either of those places are good to order a copy. And it comes in hardback and softcover and ebook.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here, for representing your family so well, and we really appreciate you